plan to invade Taiwan. They were trying to get the information which they need for an invasion. Is that it?
It could be Taiwan, it could be Japan, it could be the Philippines too. I think the most disturbing piece of evidence here is that the Chinese wanted radar in Okinawa, and one of the sailors, Thomas Zhao, actually provided that. And that really means that they are looking at what they can do in an attack on Japan or Taiwan, because an attack on Taiwan will inevitably result in an attack on Okinawa as well.
I'm curious about your thoughts, your concern over the other direction. So Chinese aggressive investment in the U.S. in everything from farmland to mining operations, their efforts to influence local regulatory policies at the state and federal level, as well as their efforts to influence our neighbors in our own region. And Central America and Honduras is a perfect example in recent months.
Yeah, sure. Well, they do, I think CFIUS...
The lack of an overarching regional security order in the Indo-Pacific. China's economic and political influence in its own geographic neighbourhood is described as a security challenge. It urges the EU to prepare a strategy that would allow us to react against China. It talks about increasing our joint efforts in capability development, building up EU military power to be a credible security actor in the region. And all of this to protect our security interests. Could we ever open an atlas? And could it tell me, what is it about Europe that entitles us to speak this way about an entire region of the world with 60% of the world's population as if it belonged to us, as if it was still a colonial backyard of Europeans? This isn't the 19th century. The European Union isn't in a position to boss around the rest of the world. We really seriously need a change in direction.
Well, isn't that the truth? Hey, everybody. My name is Alex with Reportify Media. And finally, I'm back with Cyrus Jansen. Cyrus, great to see you, man.
We're back in the game like a G.I. Joe. It's nice to see you, Alex. Thanks for having me, buddy. I'm excited for our live stream today.
Normally, we do this sometimes on Mondays, sometimes on Sundays. But hey, both of us are busy right now. We're doing it on a Tuesday. Now, if you're joining us from Cyrus's group, what will China do for the future of Ukraine and Gaza? Lots to talk about that. And, well, Cyrus, where have you been, man? You've been all over the place. What's going on?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of traveling. I've been doing a lot of traveling and kind of getting things excited, prepped for a really busy 2024. We're going to be bringing the YouTube channel back to Asia. I'm going to have some trips coming up to Asia, which I'm very excited about. Some upcoming trips even here in the United States. So looking very excited to, continue to take this channel to the next level, continue to improve and make awesome videos for you guys. So I want to appreciate everybody's support. But I think it's important because we're at a stage, Alex, right now where I really like being based in the United States because I can see things from a very different angle here. Obviously, living abroad for 15 years was amazing because you could look at the United States as all foreigners do, from the inside, from the outside looking in. And now it's important because I want to really have my pulse here on what's happening in the United States, how people are reacting, and most definitely kind of observe this U.S.-China relationship, which in my opinion is the most important geopolitical relationship in the world, and really see how that's going to develop firsthand, here in the United States. I actually am very positive about it. I think, for example, when we saw Xi Jinping travel to San Francisco, we saw a lot of positive reports coming out of that. And actions speak louder than words, Alex. We saw some of America's biggest and most important businessmen paying up to $40,000 a plate to get a seat at Xi Jinping's table. They're not stupid. The reason why they're so successful here in the United States, they know what business is, they know how to do business, and they know that the future of their business most definitely includes China. But we're also at a very pivotal time right now. I know Ian Bremmer, political scientist, just gave his State of the World address for 2024, and he said, if you think 2023 has been rocky, buckle up. Just alone with the United States presidential election in 24, it's going to be a lot more chaotic. Obviously, we're looking at Ukraine, which is very much in a stalemate right now. I think everyone has agreed to that. It's interesting also, Alex, to see, I think we're going to get into Ukraine a little bit as well, is how things have been changing very rapidly in media over the last 3 weeks. I mean, even the clips with Lindsey Graham, who has completely done a 180 on his position, which is just astonishing, really. So yeah, there's a lot to discuss that we're gonna have a lot to discuss in today's live stream.
Interesting observation. Being on the other side of the pond there, and I'm on the other side of the pond over here in China. We are seeing a lot of real hardening of the lines when it comes to, if we're going to look at the U.S. from a geopolitical standpoint, the Americans right now gearing up, getting ready for that election year coming up, very important for the country. But you see these politicians now coming into line where they were probably 1 or 2 years ago. Ukraine comes in, they deflect from that, they move away from their hard line, and they branch off to what is maybe trending or what they feel is the thing to do, even though it might not be great for their country or might not be great for other countries that actually get the brunt of it. Now, you made an interesting point about Lindsey Graham. He's done a complete 180. Before it was, we'll give you everything you want, fight to the last soldier. Now it's like, well, we're not going to really write checks for you because we need to protect the border. Now that's good old Lindsey Graham gearing up for those election votes in 2024. But there's something interesting that I want to point out that I think has really changed here in the last couple of years, and which could result in some interesting, outcomes in the U.S. election over there on your side of the water. Is there's a new game in town, and that is pretty much, all right, we're going to bring Twitter into this equation. Now, Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, I think for the first time, we're going to see this play a part in the elections. Now, what I mean by that is Elon has basically said, put it out there, let everyone read it, and we're seeing coverage like we've never seen before. It reminds me of the old days of looking back when you would cover wars and, conflicts around the world. You could get that, journalism in there, that nitty gritty kind of down to the wire stuff where they're embedded journalists. Well, now we're seeing, Twitter accounts actually showing footage that I would have never seen anywhere. And that is finally coming out. So I think we're going to see some balanced opinions when it comes to election voting in the United States. And I think that, this whole old game book where we'll put it out, maybe some of these platforms will be swayed this way or swayed that way. I think the X, or formerly known as Twitter, is going to be the town hall that Elon Musk wanted it to be. Yeah. Now, I hope it gets the support it needs from the advertisers. I hope that, and they can put their geopolitical and their base to the side and allow the platform to finally, be a place where people can talk about.
Yeah, it's exciting. Alex, I actually going to go back to 2016 because Twitter actually was very vital to Donald Trump's first election. I remember him tweeting out that Twitter was his kind of secret weapon, and he was really the first president, I think, to really leverage that power of social media. And we saw an interesting thing, of course, is that many accounts started getting suspended from Twitter and a lot of people silenced. And certainly Elon Musk has been on a mission to transform Twitter into X and really make it more about streaming. I did think it was interesting. For example, he did travel to Israel, have a Twitter Spaces with Netanyahu directly. We're going to get into Netanyahu in Israel, I think, a little bit later. He's obviously on the hot seat at the moment. But I do think what's interesting is, I agree with you. Actually, I just came in last night from Washington, D.C. I was there for the weekend. And it was always interesting to travel back to our nation's capital because you get a very big sense of on the ground when you talk to Washingtonians. Washington, D.C., there's not a lot of people that live actually in the D.C. area. So, when you're actually there on the ground, you're talking to people that live in the district. It's an interesting one because you're trying to get your pulse on everything. So for me, I was asking, what's the vibe here? What are you guys thinking about? It looks like very much it's going to be Trump and Biden again. And what is your feeling with that? And every single person I talked to had just this kind of blank stare, like almost, I can't believe, I don't even know what to say, man. Like, I don't know how to answer your question. Granted, now Washington is very, very Democratic. I would say by far, probably 80% would be very much, pro Joe Biden. very much anti-Trump. But it was interesting. I was in a gift shop. I was buying some little knickknacks for my kids when I always buy them a little something when I go somewhere. And I said, "What's the number one selling piece in here?" They're like, "Trump. Everything is Donald Trump. Like they have his T-shirts, his hats, everything is selling." I think that's a lot of tourists that come in that are buying that. Certainly not the locals there. But I was trying to get my pulse on, what's your guys' feeling for this? And I think a lot of Americans and certainly people in Washington, they're scared of Donald Trump coming back in for another term. They're also very scared of Joe Biden continuing another term. So it's really going to already, we know this, like 2024 is a wash. I think, even for myself as an American, I'm certainly hoping for 2028 that there can be this reverse of trends. Hopefully we can get some younger candidates in there that can really give a spark. I mean, because we're a year away from the election, and most people are already frustrated that it's going to be most likely going to be a repeat of 2020, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'd be quite frustrated too if I was an American looking down the barrel of a gun there in 2024. The other thing that we got to keep in mind here is that there's a pretty big strategy going on the Republican side. Now, unless Trump picks Nikki Haley as his, VP.
Right.
If something happens to him in the court systems or legally wise, and he, for some reason, cannot lead going into the election, Nikki Haley is pretty much the next in line. And that is a big neocon with beaming headlights there. And that is pretty scary for the China-U.S. relation, because she has done a 180 on the China-U.S. relation there as well. So if we have a Nikki Haley, Joe Biden, or even a Trump Biden, it's going to be complicated because there are a lot of issues that weren't solved. There's a lot of bitterness between these parties as soon as Trump gets in power there, or if he doesn't. But let's say he does, he'll be overturning a lot of the things that the Biden administration brought in, whether you agree with that or not. Now, that could, and we're not that far away, but from Ukraine's standpoint, imagine you live in Ukraine, you're a young man, you're going into battle, you're fighting a conflict, and all of a sudden that funding that supported you or you needed from your government could dry up quickly. Just like Lindsey Graham said, maybe I'm not going to write checks. That's a nation that's been ravaged over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, you go back to Lindsey Graham going with John McCain to Ukraine personally in 2016, planting the roots there. And really, you have to feel for the Ukrainians when you have U.S. politicians coming to you. I mean, what do they know, right? You've got, you've got powerful U.S. senators coming, halfway around the world saying, look, we've got your back. This is we've already asked you to take down your nuclear weapons. So, we have to support you. We have to get behind you, and we're in it for the long haul. Then, of course, again, we have that very cringe video from May 2023, where again, Lindsey Graham is sitting with Zelensky and saying, Russians are dying. It's the best money we ever spent. I mean, it's a very cringe video because, well, number one, I mean, you have to feel, again, we're always come from the standpoint of humanity, right? Russians are dying, Ukrainians are dying. It's not good for either side. And it's sad when you have a politician like that, smiling in a room, looking at it like, yeah, the Russians are dying. Hey, guess what? So are the Ukrainians. War's not good. Make peace and get on with it. But no, you've dragged this out, and now it's, can you imagine? I'm sure Zelensky's trying to make a phone call to Lindsey Graham. Hey man, you visited us twice. You told us we were going to be there, and now you're out. And now it's like, well, we need to shift priorities and take care of the border, which, I mean, I agree with as an American. I mean, we should be taking care of the border. I had Colonel Douglas McGregor on my show earlier, and we talked specifically about that. Thank you, bud. I've got a part 2 and part 3 coming out from that interview, but we talk specifically about that. We talk about Israel and also China very, very deeply. But it's a tough one when you see that, and that is unfortunately, with this democracy, things can change, and it changes how the parties are coming in. Things can change very rapidly, so that's why it's very difficult to get things done. There's always this very large bureaucratic process where, hey, for example, when I was in Washington, D.C., they just redeveloped the wharf area. So really nice, right on the river, right on the Potomac River, very nice wharf area. And they're like, yeah, back in the 1980s, we talked about it. And in the 1990s, we we're trying to get some legislation moved. In the 2000s, we got it approved, but in the 2010s, it finally started. And now here in the 2020s, it's done. And I'm like, wow, it looks great. It took you 40 years, but it looks great. But it is beautiful area. So it is kind of that interesting thing with democracy, which is, again, I'm not hating on democracy. It is just a very different system, but it is one where we're now looking at a situation, Alex, where here the pulse in America is by far the majority of Americans want to stop support to Ukraine. And I think there is a large call from many Americans who are seeing, we're going to have a massive correction in the stock market and the economy in 2024.
You betcha.
It's, the writing is on the wall. We have office building occupancy is plummeting in the United States. We have more people missing car payments every month than ever before recorded on history. We have over $1 trillion in credit card debt, which is just unfathomable to somebody in China, where you're not able to get large amounts of credit and just rack up endless amounts of debt. Of course, that is the American way. So the chickens are coming home to roost in 2024. I think there's going to be a lot of hard times ahead for many Americans. Inflation is still through the roof. It is just a very interesting time to be here because the cost of living and everything is just skyrocketing. So, we have our own issues that we really need to solve. And I think that's what you're seeing from the American public as they're getting desperate for the 2024 election. They're wanting to see change. They're wanting to see some, politicians actually act in their best interest. And that's why I think you've seen a huge shift away from Ukraine, saying, look, hey, I thought we were going to go in there and smash Putin in Russia. It's been 2 years. Like, what are we even doing there? And we've got to really question that. Unfortunately, and now most people, and again, it's not like we're, not like sometimes people say, oh, you're spouting like pro-Kremlin propaganda. It's like, no, these are some of the brightest minds in U.S. think tanks basically coming to the same conclusion. We're at a stalemate, and we need to really redefine what success in Ukraine looks like. We need to realize that this has become a war of attrition, which highly favors someone like Putin who is prepared to wait.
I want to focus in on the Ukraine issue because I think this is a very clear indication, as you just said, about the financial markets. Totally agree with you. A lot of window dressing going on in the United States. A lot of phantom companies being held up by debt. A lot of S&P companies on, I would say probably, if I could guess, maybe 30% of them of the money that they borrowed during the pandemic. That debt has not been paid back. That's still on the books. If you put any of these companies against the wall, they would crumble. Let me give you an example of, musical chairs in the economy. Russia's gone through that. Russia just went through that the last 2 years. Now, here's a way to find out if your country can handle it. Well, be kicked out of the SWIFT banking system, be sanctioned 11 times, have just about every company that you can imagine Western-wise, including Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Starbucks, you name it under the sun, financial institutions, have a pipeline bombed, pretty much cut your, the traveling abilities to do business off, and the musical chairs stop. Now that's stopped in Russia, and they got through it. They went through difficult times, and now their economy is balanced, flourishing. Now, not saying it's, rocking and rolling, but I can tell you, if I was a betting man right now, whose economy is going to get through 2024 relatively okay, I would think it's the Russians, compared to the U.S. economy. Now, let's talk about that for a moment. Okay, so let's say I'm going to ask you a question, Cyrus, because I want to see how you answer this, because I'm going to give my answer to this as well. If you were in charge of Ukraine right now, somebody voted you in and said, okay, Cyrus Jansen, the the voice of reason and the ambassador of peace. You are now the president of the Ukraine. How would you get out of this mess? What would you do tomorrow morning in the office?
Well, I think what's simple is you have to figure out a reasonable conclusion here, right? Like, for example, the goal for the United States, the stated goal was we're going to drive back Russia to pre-invasion war lines. And I shared in the interview with Colonel Douglas Macgregor, it really has boiled down to the NATO expansion, right? And that's something that we heard for a long time, that it wasn't about NATO expansion. It's basically, we have painted this picture that Putin, is sad that the USSR, the Soviet Union, disbanded. He wants to recreate that. He's going to go ahead and capture all of Ukraine. He wants to take over the entire country. He wants to make it Russia again. After he's done with Ukraine, he's then, we've got the domino theory again, right, from Vietnam War. He's going to then take, Georgia and other countries that are, prime easy targets, and he's going to fulfill his dream of, basically recreating the Soviet Union. That's kind of what people have been saying. That's not true. And even the Ukrainian government officials have now admitted that at the primary problem here has always been NATO expansion, and that has just been a security red line for Russia. And again, we've highlighted this so much. John Mearsheimer, fantastic video on YouTube from 2015, 30 million views on YouTube now, where he basically laid out in a very clear way everything that's going to happen. And it happened almost exactly like Mearsheimer laid out. So when you look at this research that, and John Mearsheimer, one of the most brilliant political minds in the United States, that is a realist, right? It's not about this good versus bad, this democracy versus autocracy, good versus evil. It's just about being a realist. It's realism, meaning that that countries are going to do what is in their best interest. And again, it's the same reason why we had the fiasco in the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, is that there's no way in hell that the United States is going to allow Russia or China or anybody for that matter to put military capabilities in a place like Cuba, 90 miles off the coast of the America. It's a red line. In fact, we got the Monroe Doctrine. You can't build anything in the Western Hemisphere that's going to invade on our territory or even come close to being a threat to us. So the interesting thing is that we have to find a balance there of what is a reasonable security compromise. And at this point, there was a peace deal on the table a few weeks after the war. It's a much better deal than anything that Ukraine is going to see now. And that's the problem. The longer you wait to negotiate, the who has the upper hand right now. I was reading an article in Der Spiegel, which is German political newspaper. It is one of continental Europe's most trusted and respected political magazines. And they had the same thing where, the Germans had come out and said, Putin is laughing at us. Putin is basically in a position where he is extremely confident right now. And why wouldn't he be? And I'm not trying to say that there's not some struggles there. For example,
right.
Putin, they have shifted to a war-based economy. So is it sustainable for the long term? No, it's not like Russia is going to run a war-based economy for the next 20 years, but certainly it has stabilized Russia. The ruble has rebounded. What we're looking at right now is the economy has stabilized, and again, there is, for the short term, for the foreseeable future, it's working for them. They're going to be, like you said, who's going to be able to manage 2024 a little bit better right now? Well, they do have a war-based economy that is flourishing. And let's be honest. The United States, we use a war-based economy a lot of times as well, where we're certainly, creating wars in the Middle East and around the world. And as we know, war is profitable. You can make a lot of money during war. So I think it's a very long-winded question or answer to your question here, but my big thing is you have to find peace in somehow. So it's like managing a divorce. All right, you get two couples wanting to get a divorce. Well, you're going to have to split things up, right? You're going to have to. All right, what are we going to do with the house? Right? Are we going to sell it and split the money down the middle? Or are we going to give it to one side or the other? And I think what you're seeing now is, let's be honest. These are Russian-speaking regions in Ukraine that, quite frankly, don't want to have anything to do with Ukraine. I think it's ludicrous to fight a war for people that don't want to be part of your country. And it's really, we have to look at what is the best long-term scenario here. And even someone like Richard Haas, again, he was a head of a think tank that is the primary think tank that advises the United States president. He said we need to shift to Ukraine maintaining as much land as possible. And if we were to negotiate a peace deal now, they can probably keep about 80% of their land, which, you can look at it glass half empty, glass half full. Hey, you lost 20% of your land. Hey, guess what? You've kept 80% of your land. And hopefully there needs to be some security guarantees. There needs to be, the international community working there that, okay, is this the deal? Like, are we going to, draw a new line here and call it as it is and say, let's respect this new line? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not one that's going to be obviously there negotiating a peace treaty, but it's just unsustainable. And Foreign Affairs came out with a new article yesterday. Funding's done by the end of the year. So we've got 3 weeks left, and then Ukraine is officially done. And, the Ukraine cannot roll without the United States bankrolling it. So it's a very pivotal time, Alex. And I think what's interesting is, we're going to see, kind of getting back to the topic of this and the title, what will China do? And I would like to see, I think there needs to be a huge rebuilding effort. I think there's going to be a huge rebuilding effort for Ukraine as their country has been absolutely slaughtered. I mean, you would think that China, the Belt and Road Initiative, the ability to come in and build amazing infrastructure and certainly help. And I mean, we have to remember that, China certainly is a player that is trying to keep all of its cards open. And it obviously has close relations with Russia. It has diplomatic relations with Ukraine as well. It's obviously has relations with Israel, has relations with Palestine. I think it gives China a lot of leverage actually in the future for some possible negotiations and, hopefully helping the Ukrainians. Again, I mean, it's not like I'm pro Putin and pro Russia and I want Ukraine to fail. I genuinely feel sorry for them. I feel sorry because they were led down the wrong road. They could have been this war could have been avoided with smart diplomacy, and they're getting a raw deal because we're now backing out. And we grossly miscalculated, the results of this war after 2 years.
Well, thanks for covering that. I'll give my 2 cents on this.
Please.
They better get to the negotiation tables ASAP as soon as possible. Ukraine, in my vision, is finished. I don't think the country can, in its old form, of course, ever get that back. What the Russians have taken for land, that ain't going to be given back either. Right. Because there's this threshold where they say, all right, Minsk 1, Minsk 2 agreement, very clear. And for the viewers that haven't read that, please read these agreements. Maybe somebody can put a link to the PDF. They're very easy to find on Google. If you read through that agreement, it very clearly says that this started back in 2014. Now, they had the chance back then to use diplomacy. They tried. Various chancellors were involved, right, as well as, Belarus. France was even involved in negotiating that deal. It failed once, it failed twice. But it was very clear from Ukraine's standpoint that, yeah, we're probably not going to get the Luhansk and Donetsk area, Donbass area back, including the annexed Crimea.
Right.
But when you start to build up and you start pumping, billions of dollars, your taxpayers' dollars, into this country, and you prop up its economy. I still watch videos of, vloggers in the Ukraine, and I'm saying, how on earth do these businesses continue to survive a war zone? Well, it's America, it's Europe pumping money into that economy.
Right.
As you say, 3-4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks from now, you pull that funding out. There is nothing left in that economy. Zero. Would you go buy a house in Ukraine right now? Would you start a factory in Ukraine right now? Would you start a travel business in Ukraine right now? Would you start an airline business in Ukraine right now? You wouldn't do anything. Now, that's not to say that there's, as you say, we're sympathizing with Russia here. You have had the entire NATO's nations get behind, support Ukraine, pump maybe even $500 billion when this is all done. Hundreds of thousands of dead young men on both sides, casualties of war, very traumatizing when you think about it. Millions of that population of young children with their mothers have moved out of that country. The children now 2-3 years, maybe learning another language. Maybe they're learning a Scandic language. Maybe they're learning English. Maybe they're learning French, German, Polish, wherever they are. They're scattered everywhere. Right. And for the world to think that, this is going to be okay, let's just stop the war. You have a catastrophic amount of money that is going to be needed to rebuild. And as Patrick Lancaster, who you've had a fantastic interview with as well, that can be seen on your channel, and I suggest people watch that interview. It's fantastic. But where Patrick clearly said, it's better if somebody takes their money and pours boulders into the water and rebuilds land than using this old land that is just riddled with munitions and mines everywhere. Why would you even remotely want to clean that up? And we can use examples for this. Right. We can look at Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, that, Princess Diana went down there and to try to gain, international support to clean up these, areas that were mined. Look at Laos, 300,000 unexploded munitions riddled through this country. They don't care. The boys that wrote the checks to let these bombs fly, they don't care. Yeah. They really don't care what happens. And that, I asked Patrick on my program a couple of times, how bad is this land? How bad is it? And he says, 20, 30 years, maybe it could be cleaned up, but why bother? And that's where we're at. So when we come to the rebuilding part now, and China comes into this, I saw an interesting comment here. Here's the comment here. What will China do for Ukraine and Gaza? Absolutely nothing. It has enough internal problems. I'm not sure that's giving China a fair shake. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I always try to be as objective and fair with China, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that China certainly has its issues, as does every country in the world. We've talked about the United States and how I'm looking at 2024 in this country. I mean, we certainly see that there's a lot of problems that China is dealing with. But I also want to point to the fact that China just also had one of the most successful Belt and Road forums in Beijing a couple months ago. 130 countries from around the world sent delegations there. When, for example, when Joe Biden had raised a question, when basically said we're trying to get another $100 billion to Ukraine, and so obviously that's what the Democrats are trying to push through right now. They are meeting heavy resistance from the Republicans saying, no way, I do not want you to spend another $100 billion. So that money that we've given to Ukraine, it will end within the next 3 weeks. On the table is another $100 billion from, I think it's actually $106 billion from Biden and the Democrats. However, Lindsey Graham, the flip-flopper, and the Republicans have now come in and basically vetoed that and stopped that. So I think that's at a standstill. I don't see how that's going to pass without bipartisan support. Now, the interesting thing, at the same time when Biden suggested that, China also, announced that they're going to invest $100 billion in more Belt and Road projects around the world. So, now let's be honest and let's be very fair here. Is China investing in the same way that they were before? Of course not. It is definitely much reduced. I think there's much more scrutiny to the projects that they are going to invest in because, quite frankly, some of them have not turned out as well as China would have hoped. But let's also keep in perspective that China has over 1,300 projects around the world. Alex, you know this, as you and I both trade the stock markets. Right. When you're having a portfolio of stocks, you're not going to have 20 winners. You're going to have some are outstanding, some are average, and some are going to be below par, and some might even fail. So
and if you have somebody on the board of trustees watching those investments, they may be able to steer the ship in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of a tightening. I mean, certainly when China started the Belt and Road Initiative, I mean, I think they were very much just handing out cash and pretty much signing off on anything. Like, yeah, let's just get as many projects as we can going and, maybe try to expand a little bit too fast, too aggressively. There has been a lot of successful projects. I do want to mention that. I think that's really important to understand. And I think that China wants to be a a global player here, and they have their seat at the table. They are a rising global superpower, and I think that's what we're seeing with the situation when we talk to Israel and Palestine. Why, here's the proof in the pudding. Why is it that all of these Muslim countries say the first stop is China? We're going to Beijing and we are going to negotiate, and we're going to send delegates from 12 Muslim countries to Beijing in an effort to try to get this to be a ceasefire. And that was a very powerful statement, I think, because they're not going to Washington, D.C. They're coming to Beijing. Obviously, Beijing had already organized a peace deal, a peace treaty between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which the United States certainly wasn't able to do, but China was able to do that. So I think there needs to be more credit given to China. Again, I think that they are a rising superpower. I wouldn't say that they have as much leverage as the United States on the international stage, but but we do see China growing in the global South, and I think that is something that I have been really focusing on this year with my vlogs. Just the voice of the global South, why they are wanting to continue to work with China. It's very powerful reasons, Alex. I mean, I saw, for example, there was, I think it was Secretary of Commerce, basically saying, trying to limit China's, the EV batteries and everything. And it's like, look, if anybody in the European market or the African market or the Latin American market wants to do this, we need to actively sanction them and go after them. And it's like, oh, wow. So now the United States is going to dictate who can do business with China. And again, there's a reason why Africa is choosing China. And I made a very big breakdown on that earlier this year. I did a breakdown of the Belt and Road Initiative. Actually, we've done many Belt and Road Initiative breakdowns talking about Africa, Latin America, the Middle East. All those videos have gone over 1 million views because so many people from those countries are like, Cyrus, thanks for making a video about this because, hey, I'm from Africa. This is what's happening in my country. Hey, I'm from Bolivia. This is what's happening in my country. This is what's happening in my continent. And we need to have a bit different perspective, which, again, living in the United States, I was meeting some friends in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, and they're like, we not only do we not understand world politics or world events, we don't even understand local events. Because if you're in Washington, D.C., you only pay attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C. So we don't even do a good job of understanding the United States domestically. So that's why a lot of Americans really don't understand, again, what's going on internationally. And again, I got the Colonel Douglas McGregor coming on for 2 more videos this week, which I'm excited to share. He breaks down a lot of that.
Well, I want to continue to talk about the BRI, and then I'll explain a couple of things that some papers I got in front of me here. But China has signed agreements and invested in approximately 153 nations already. They are one-to-one first trading partners. That means, the largest trading partners to those countries. There's over 115 of them, which is China is their first number one trading partner. So when we see, people say, well, I don't think China's directly going to invest in Ukraine. Well, pretty much every other country around it has China's support, whether it's in infrastructure. Now, what China does is quite interesting. They're going to go into the country and they're going to say, okay, look, we understand the infrastructure is one thing, but they also go in there and they try to influence the financial system by saying, okay, guys, you got to lend out to small businesses. What that means is you got to start opening up some local banks. Of course, we're going to do the first round of maybe some funding to these banks, but your loans officers that used to be, this is what built kind of America and Canada's economy, that loan officer that worked at that small credit union, that branch manager in the subdivision that would bring a family in. Hey, this is your first house. Are you going to buy a car? Or are you going to invest in a business? And those people on the ground, those branch managers, those little loans officers, those bank managers, those credit unions, as they start to spread out and build and help support the economy, that economy can finally then survive. And then immediately it has that infrastructure in place. It's very easy to see. I used to run an online business, and seeing how fast logistics used to come from China. When we started the business, our only way of getting goods to Europe, where our fulfillment company was by cargo ship. And then 4 or 5 years into it, that shrunk to air freight. And then air freight was, kind of a slow, costly way of getting it. Well, by the time before we sold the company and stuff like that, it took approximately only 3 days to get the stuff into Europe, which is quite interesting. Now, that has a lot. You can see the logistical chains of DHL. You can see the logistical chains of many companies that use this platform. If you're looking at Africa, you can go all the way down the line. You can see, okay, what African country has put, a rail system in there now?
Right.
What country has put a port in there? This all really makes sense if you look at it from a global standpoint and just follow that whole supply chain coming from Europe as it zigzags all across right back to China. And I'm going to bring you up the city I'm living in right now, Chongqing, and we're going to talk about the new energy vehicles just for a quick, because you brought it up. So that's why I'm going to talk about it.
Sure.
There is a big misunderstanding in NEV vehicles here in China. And I seem to, you're on the other side of the water there. So I'm going to really pick your brain about this.
Yeah.
Most people that I've been talking to in North America and Canada first start by saying, cheap automobiles. I wouldn't drive an NEV if you paid me. Or unreliable, or battery fire, or, not difficult to charge. I'm in a city of 34 million people, Cyrus.
Yeah.
Every single day, I continually see, service stations that are mothballed. I'm seeing more green license plates.
Yeah.
I'm seeing cooler cars. I was at NIO's showroom this week. Do you know that NIO's showroom, and NIO is a new energy vehicle, they believe in, oh God, they're going to kick my butt for forgetting this, but they use battery swapping. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of that, but you go to NIO, they have all this infrastructure all throughout China, massive investment. Okay. Massive investment. You buy a NIO car, you drive it 4 or 5 hours. Now you might say, oh, I've got to pull over. I've got to, maybe we'll charge it for a couple of hours and then we'll get back on the road. Nope. Battery swapping, move into there. The 2.0 platform can swap out an old battery, put a new battery in your car in 6 or 7 minutes. The 3.0, which is the charging station, it's like a car wash. You drive it in there, you stop, automatically it goes under the car, takes bolts out by robotics. Battery drops out, they pop another one in. 3 or 4 minutes later, you're back on the road again.
Yeah.
And this whole entire network and how they've set up the purchasing of a car. When you buy a car, you become part of a community, and people talk about software updates and stuff like that. I've never been in a car where the seats start to warm up, a fireplace comes on the display, classical music sitting there, and somebody can drive the car for you. For cars that were and I don't want to use the word cheap, as affordable as 40 to 45,000. That's for what they call mid-luxury to luxury, going up to about 60, 75, 80,000. Now we think, oh, there's only 1 or 2 car players here. No, there's a lot of automobiles here. Some automobiles like the Wuling, you can get into it. It's like a little smart car here, $5,000, $5,000. You want to trade it in? Don't like it? Okay, no problem. But some of these other cars are quite amazing, and I just can't understand why there is such a pushback in North America against these cars. I'm wondering if it's lobbyists that are aligned with oil and gas companies that say, NEV cars are good. Let's go with the lobbyists on that. Or is it the United Auto Workers? And if you're from the UAW on here, I trust that you guys are going through a change of, we'll call it disruptive technology.
Right.
And hopefully the company that you're working for is ready for it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, yes, there's going to be some failures in the new energy vehicle market here. But when I walk out in a city of 34 million people and I see a blue sky out front of my door every morning and these cars whipping around, not one in 100, but almost every second car It's coming no matter what you want. And here's the unfortunate thing, and then I'm going to hand it over to you, is this could actually really change people's lives in North America. The cost of running these cars per month is 85% less than actually a petrol car. I talked to a guy. I said, "What did you used to spend on gas a month?" "Oh, I don't know, $600-700 a month. You know, 2-hour commute day each day." He switched to new energy vehicle. "How much you spend a month?" "About $40 to $50."
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. That it's the cost advantage, and I think I'll answer your question, Alex. You know why there's a little bit of resistance. I mean, what's interesting, first of all, is I want to go first talk about the China market, because what we're seeing in China is that I have actually a video that I'm making about EVs, and what we're seeing for this is the best way to sum it up. For decades, China has been looking to the West and trying to learn information, trying to learn technology. Again, even been accused of copycatting things and really trying to steal technology from the West. But in a complete reversal, we're now at a point now where Western companies are buying stakes in Chinese EV companies to get access to Chinese technology. Just again, think about that for a second. We have made a complete reversal here. Before, China always needed information from the West and wanted to learn more. Now, China is so much more advanced in this particular industry that the opposite is happening. So Volkswagen took out a 700 million investment in Xpeng to access their technology. And there's another conglomerate company that made an even larger investment of $1.6 billion, and basically saying, we need to get access to this Chinese technology to help our EVs in Europe. What you're going to see ultimately, though, Alex, is that at the end of the day, these new designs coming out of China are better, faster, slicker, more features, and much more affordable. And at the end of the day, people want to have affordable things and have things that are nice. I tell you, an example is looking at the TV market. For example, there's the Vivo, which had sponsored some of the big college football games here. All of a sudden, you go to something like a Costco here in the United States, you've got your 60-inch TV. Okay, this one's from Sony. It costs $1,200. This one's Vivo, from China, and it costs $500. Okay, and you're looking at them side by side in the store, and you're like, actually, I think the $500 one's actually a little bit better quality here. Like, what is the difference here? Are we just paying for the Sony logo on this one? So you've seen the sales have skyrocketed. They partnered with the World Cup as an official sponsor, so there's sales have absolutely skyrocketed, and a lot of people, myself included, I'm like, wait, I'm going to buy the Vivo TV because I don't care if it's made in China or elsewhere. I'm looking for the most affordable price and the best quality as a result of that. What we're also seeing is there's been a lot of reports that China is becoming very smart, and they're actually opening up car manufacturers in Mexico, and they're going to be accessing the North American market, via Mexico. And that's actually something that a lot of people aren't talking about as well, is that a lot of people are, look at all these manufacturers that are leaving China because China is so is so expensive to manufacture. It's actually a lot of Chinese companies that are building factories in places like Mexico and Vietnam to also take advantage of the cheaper labor. It is no doubt about it. Labor in China is much more expensive. It's to the tune of a 7 times increase in the last 23 years. From you look at the wages in 2000 to 2023, when you factor in insurances, pensions, all of these things, China has modernized, and it's not like they've killed their manufacturing sector. It's just gotten better. It's gotten more dialed in. It's gotten better for the workers as well. Much more of an international structure with pensions and insurances, etc. So what's interesting, though, is that, again, there is a lot of, the EV market is very hot right now. And I think that China has there is a dominant lead in that. And I think ultimately you're going to see Chinese companies breaking into the European markets. You're going to see them breaking into the American markets. Now, of course, from the Republican side, they're going to, you're going to get someone like a Gordon Chang who is going to, China is going to bring EV cars into America, and then they're going to be able to remote control them from China and cause terrorism, or spying. And then you've certainly got a lot of Republicans who are not buying into the climate change and saying, we need to do fossil fuels and we need to, gas cars are the future, or not the future, but it is the best thing for now and for the long haul. But again, you brought up a good point. With America and politicians, you always have to think about the lobbyists, because no one is really acting in American politicians don't act in the interest of people or the country. They act in their own interest. And this is why these lobbyists, which is basically just legalized corruption, are able to go in. And it is exactly why, for example, the gun problem will never be solved in America, because the National Rifle Association pays way too much money to right-wing politicians to make sure that that Second Amendment never changes, and that basically we are able to sell as many guns as possible, because it's highly profitable and it's a very robust industry. And we sell this propaganda of, oh, you need a gun to protect yourself from the government. Just in case that government comes knocking on your door, you can protect yourself, which is just nonsense. So, again, I'm quite heated on that one. I'm very traumatized by the gun crime that does exist in this country, and simply the crime that has just gotten, what is it? The type of crimes like assaults and all of these very hard crimes in America. I mean, it's up like 200% this year. It's seen a 200% increase in violent crime in the United States, and it's across the board through major cities. I mean, you have to very much watch yourself when you're in major cities. And, I know that's something you have no idea what that means, Alex, living in China, because as we know, China is one of the safest countries in the world. And that is just the cold, hard truth there. There's no propaganda in that. It is just anyone that has been there can certainly go there. But yeah, I mean, Alex, we've crossed 1,000 people on my side of the stream. I think you've got probably a bit more. We've got a lot of people here. So just want to say thanks, everybody. I, appreciate everybody's being here today. I still think we got some time. So just wanted to say thanks.
Yes. I want to also thank everybody for joining the program as well. I brought this little quote up here, Gregory. I would never even buy an EV bicycle. Everything EV is overpriced, impossible to repair, and unreliable. Possibly in the United States or wherever you're quoting that from, whatever country you're comparing that to. But let me give you, Gregory, an example of EV bike or an EV scooter. I have two of them I use throughout the city here. And this city is the size, it's bigger than New York, population-wise, 34 million people. I charged it this weekend. It will last me 2 weeks. This is a scooter that can take two people throughout the city. It will cost me 80 cents to pretty much fully charge that for 2 weeks of usage. I've had it for 2 years. The cost of that, the luxury model cost of that scooter was $684 US for that. That's the high-end one. And the lower-end one for the other part of the city cost me $350 brand new for those. So would you not buy that? Well, I'll leave you to think and contemplate that. Another one here is, this is a usual line that we always see: not convinced mining using child labor for lithium, cobalt, nickel is ongoing. These minerals are not as plentiful as some people seem to think. Maybe you want to not type that on the iPhone that uses that type of batteries. So when you look at this, once again, this is the kind of stuff when you see these people and they come and they say, it's unreliable. It's not made very well. China steals this technology. Huawei, the company Huawei here in China, is one of the largest patent holders in the world. Okay. They're investing in patents. Okay. Drone technology. Whose technology is that? Let's call it from the consumer part. DJI, I would have to say, are pretty much the major brand for drones if you're going to buy it from a commercial standpoint.
Right.
Well, they didn't steal that from America, okay? America gets their mobile phones manufactured over here in China, okay?
Right.
Why? Reliability. Components are high priced. And this is the thing about the big misunderstanding about China, where people say China makes cheap goods. The reason why China makes sometimes cheap goods is because you have to remember who the intermediary is, or who the actual buyer is to sell it to the consumer. If it's a buyer like Walmart and they say, okay, we only want to spend 10 cents on a tea mug. Okay. The Chinese factories say, all right, yeah, we could probably make it for 10 cents. The buyer at Walmart is fine. He's happy. He puts it on the shelves. He sells it for a good markup. People go home. They have maybe 2 weeks, and then the tea mug breaks, and they say cheap Chinese goods.
Yeah.
But if you go to China and you say, we're going to pay this for this device, and we're going to pay that. And you got to remember, not much profit is made in China on iPhones.
No.
Most of that profit is moved over to America and made by the company in California, okay? Or unless it's headquarters in Ireland for tax purposes. But we seem to forget that most of the stuff out here, and you'll hear cheap Chinese labor. Sorry, that boat has sailed, as Cyrus said, many years ago. The cheap Chinese labor boat has sailed a long, long, long time ago. The cost of labor here is more expensive, and that's where China has said, okay, the BRI is the way to go. Let's move manufacturing to this country. Let's move it to that country. They're not shy to move their factories anymore. And people just say, well, I'm going to invest in Mexico. I can guarantee you the Chinese are heavily invested in Mexico.
Absolutely.
So let's have a look. Let's talk about Gaza for a moment here.
Sure.
I put a video out on my channel yesterday. It's the first video in 4 years of YouTube that I've ever had a demonetization and an immediate age restriction, which it was one of my most successful videos that ever came out on Reportify Media in the first 30 to 45 minutes. And it was a collaboration with CGTN. And also Daniel Dumbrell was on the documentary at the end there. YouTube pretty much silenced it and said, nope, age restriction, add limitation, the whole 9 yards out of the gate. So there's a little plug. If you want to see it on my channel, you just look at it. It's called Inside Gaza. You'll see it in the main front page. But I mean, we've seen some pretty horrifying stuff come out of this area here, and it continues, Cyrus. It's going on just as it was, a week and a half ago. I mean, you had the Colonel on last night, or was it last night? Colonel McGregor?
Yeah, Monday morning.
Monday, what was your topic of that video?
That one we focused on Ukraine. So we focused specifically on Ukraine, and I think, I've got another one coming out tomorrow that's going to be about Israel and Gaza. I've got another one coming out on Friday that's going to be about China and the United States. So we've got some good interviews. I got a very long interview with the Colonel. I've kind of broken it up into several videos to make it a little bit easier because they're very diverse topics there. So yeah, I mean, it's, Alex, I think what's really difficult is that I think I had an interview with a British activist, very interesting gentleman by the name of Low Key. He is a British hip hop artist and also a scholar, I would say. He has a master's degree in Middle Eastern studies, very well spoken, very articulate, very knowledgeable about the subject matter. And I think it is quite incredible. Just we have about a 40-minute chat that I uploaded on Sunday. And that chat is amazing because he really breaks down the history. If you really want a history lesson, if you really want to understand the nuts and bolts behind Israel, Palestine, the struggle, and what's really going on there, this is really the interview that you need to watch. And he did a fantastic job, just very articulate, just breaking it down with simple facts. And I think what we're really seeing here is just a tremendous loss for humanity. Because what I'm seeing in the United States is that we are losing our ability to control Israel and really have any type of influence. This is something that the Colonel said. This is a little preview for you guys. I got a video going out tomorrow, but basically he said in the early 90s, what happened is that the United States had an ability to make Israel listen and be able to, rein them in when needed. And there was a situation in the early 90s where Israel wanted to respond with brutal force. They wanted to come out and they just wanted to slam Palestine. And it was really George Bush Sr., who said, this is not what you need to do. We're not going to allow you to do that. You're going to need to step down and you need to retreat from that. And at the time, Israel listened. And that was that kind of this, basically the last threshold, if you will. The last key to stopping them. And this is really important to understand, because the United States, we fund Israel with over $3 billion a year in military aid. Adjusted for inflation,
Incredible.
since Israel's inception, we've given them over $300 billion in military aid. Quite frankly, Israel would not exist without the United States. It's a fact. It would not exist. Now, I am certainly not against Israel. I certainly think that Israel has a right to exist as a country. I certainly think that Jews, most definitely can have a country. But what baffles me is that, given the history of Israel and given the history of what Jewish people have gone through, it is just absolutely remarkable to think that treating another group of people like this is acceptable. You've got a person like Mark Regev, who is a senior consultant to Benjamin Netanyahu. He has no shortage of appearances on mainstream media. And there was I don't know if you saw this clip yet. Did you see the clip with Mark Regev and Jake Draper from CNN last night? So this was quite amazing, because Jake Draper and CNN is finally, again, there's some pushback. It's finally like, how can you guys continue to just slaughter, innocent lives left, right, and center? And his thing is, well, if you're holding Israel to the standard of perfection, of course, we're going to fall short of that. However, we're doing everything we can. And, in the beginning, we told people that if you're in northern Gaza, you can go to southern Gaza. Now, I'm not going to say it was easy. That's probably pretty difficult, but at least you have an option. And Jake Draper said, well, now you're fighting in southern Gaza. So where do they go? Like, what are you going to do? And it's like, well, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And he's like, and then Jake Draper said, we have a CNN producer, like someone on our producing team. They just lost 9 family members in Gaza. Like he just lost his entire family. What do you have to say to that? And it's like, well, every loss of life is tough. It's a tragedy, but you have to remember, we're fighting this war. We need to win it. And, again, we had, and so there's just this amazing ability from a guy like Mark Regev to just go on mainstream media every single day and basically just justify the slaughtering of innocent civilians. And that's it. That's exactly what he's doing every single day, just going on and justifying this. And again, this is not me being anti-Semitic. This is not me being, not understanding what happened on October 7th, right? October 7th was brutal. It was a terrorist attack. What's that? You're the ambassador of peace. Thank you, buddy. I mean, again, I feel for what happened to Israel on October 7th, but let's also not forget that, the conditions that were set for extremism to exist, and this is where really the tide is turning. And this, I think, is incredible as well, Alex, is that Lloyd Austin, our top, I believe he's the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, came out and said, very powerful speech, saying that what Israel thinks is going to be a military victory will actually end up in a strategic defeat. Basically implying that the more innocent civilians you kill, you're not going to be able to eradicate Hamas. You'll be able to weaken Hamas. You're not going to eradicate them, because whoever survives is going to be so traumatized from this, more than likely you're going to create more Hamas or more extremism or more terrorists. So it's really a lose-lose situation. And there is no end game here. And what I'm starting to question is, we're seeing people like a Mark Regev who have said, look, there is a Sinai Peninsula waiting for you. Just get out into the desert, leave Gaza, and we all know what's going to happen. If you get 2.2 million people out of Gaza and Israel takes over, they're never going to see that land again. That's the end of that. And I mean, just think about the logistics. You're going to send 2.2 million people out to the Sinai Desert, which is ironically where the Jews, wandered for 40 years in the biblical days. Wandering for 40 years as they were searching for the Promised Land. I mean, it is just really baffling that they could, do something like that. And it's like, well, the international community will set up tents. We'll get water there. Really? Tents and water for 2.2 million people? Do you know the logistics behind that? I mean, even to last for one day. I mean, how are you going to do that, sustain that for, it's going to have to be months at a time. Food, clothing, I mean, bathrooms. Like, this doesn't make, and no one has even thought about this logistically. It's absolutely shocking. And I mean, it's just heartbreaking to see.
Sorry to interrupt you, Cyrus. I had a little bit of a go with a family member who didn't really agree with me on a few things in regards to this topic. And they said, well, they were told that they could go. And I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You walk out if you can, or if you're probably already outside, the lights are off. There's no mobile phones. There's no internet connectivity. There's no water. Probably the bank machines, ATM machines are closed down. Doesn't matter because there's probably no stores operating. And you're telling people by foot, okay, so I just said, how about you stand in your front yard? Don't take your phone with you. Just go out there in your sandals, whatever the weather's like, and start walking, tens of hundreds of kilometers into the darkness. If you're not hit by a bomb, you're not run over by a tank, or, hit in crossfire or leveled buildings all over the place. And let's say you do actually make it to the other side. Now you're there. You still might want to be staying in the north because you might want to help dig out. You see these people are digging out. You'll see it in my video. It's mind-blowing that this is going on. They're smashing rocks against concrete to break it, to pull the concrete out, to get family members that are crushed under this. What on earth is the international community doing here? Just sitting by idly. I mean, Claire Diley, who has said, you'll see it in my video. It's a 20-minute video. It's absolutely disgusting. Yes, we understand. I'm not gonna get into it about condemning this and condemning that. You'll watch my my documentary. You'll clearly see the opinions that are in it. But how can people just sit back, idly back, and say, okay, move them all up to the north. Now let's move them all now back down to the south. I mean, Cyrus, this is everywhere on X now, formerly known as Twitter. This is everywhere now. And this is the big change in what you and I even saw a year ago. If there wasn't X, we wouldn't see this. The narrative would be very close. Got to remember, the propaganda is very powerful in that part of the world. The IDF has very good spokesmen. They're very powerful. America's propaganda machine is very, very powerful. But we have seen, as you say, a shift in the media, and it's come in line a little bit more here, which is kind of refreshing. Now we're finally getting to the point where some of these media channels, Channel 4 UK has done an amazing job covering this. They've gone in there and they said, here it is. Yeah. You, the viewer, you make the judgment call on this. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, Alex, I mean, so in my interview with Low Key, the British scholar who talked about, Palestine and Israel, I asked him a question. I said, the hashtag stand with Palestine, the hashtag free Palestine has 6.7 million views or 6.7 million posts on Instagram, while the hashtag stand with Israel has around 255,000. And what's interesting is I just asked him, I said, what is the reason for that? And again, of course, a lot of propaganda and a lot of media here in the United States say, well, look at this, look at TikTok. TikTok is from the Chinese Communist Party, and TikTok has said, they've obviously influenced the algorithms. And it's like, oh, interesting, because we're not talking about TikTok. We're talking about Instagram, which is owned by Facebook and controlled, by in the United States. Okay. So we're talking on Instagram. Forget TikTok, forget China and all that. And the reality is that there is one content creator that is his name is Motaz Aziza. I mispronounced his name. Apologies for that. But I highlighted this in the interview. He went from around 200,000 followers on Instagram to 15 million in the span of 6 weeks. 15 million. I mean, he gained 15 million followers on Instagram in the span of 6 weeks. It might be the most prolific gain on Instagram history, minus, if you're Taylor Swift or something, like a major celebrity that just probably started an account. But for this is a normal photographer. And he has some of the most incredible images that you will see from Gaza. And he is risking his life every single day. We can't forget that Israel, there's the gentleman right there on the screen. So you can look at him. It's incredible. You cannot believe the images that are seen, and look. And his thing is just so professional, right? I mean, none of it's propaganda. It's him simply walking around, just showing what he sees on the ground. And this is the difference, Alex. We live in a digital age now where
Yes.
everything is instant, right? If a bomb attacks, blows up a building in Gaza, it will be on Twitter, it'll be on Instagram, it'll be on TikTok within the next 60 seconds. That's exactly
Scrutinized, verified, and the internet sleuths will get to the bottom of it. If you lie about it, you're going to get caught.
Absolutely. And that's the difference. And somebody had mentioned a really good thing. He said, when our war on terror back in early 2000, right, when the United States launched our war on terror, we had no social media. We had no insights into what was happening, right? I was a senior in high school. The only insights that you get is when you turn on CNN and it's like, well, American troops are over there defending our freedom, and they're overtaking, Iraq, for weapons of mass destruction. And, we've just done this, this, and this. And here's the news footage that our media covered there. You don't hear what's on the ground. Here we are 20 years later. Oh, by the way, we killed millions of Muslims, millions of innocent Muslims we killed. I guarantee you, if that conflict happened today, you would start to see a lot of Americans like, wait, what are we actually doing over there? Like, what about all these innocent civilians that we're slaughtering? So that's the difference, Alex. 20 years ago, in the American War on Terror, we had no idea what we were doing over there. I'm talking about me as an American citizen. I had no idea what my military was doing over there. I was just told they're defending our freedom. We need to, we're at war. And what do you do? I mean, what am I going to do? I'm just living my life in America. They're over there doing their thing. But now this is the issue. This is why Mark Regev cannot hide behind, and this is why he's getting called out. I mean, CNN is, we know CNN's coverage. I mean, when you have some of the people like Jake Draper, who's just like, no, like but you're killing. Yeah, you're saying that you've killed 5,000 Hamas terrorists at this point. Okay, well, what about the 15, 20,000 innocent civilians, right? Like, if you're going to eradicate all of Hamas, if we just do the calculations, like, we're going to have over, you're going to have 75, 100,000 innocent civilians slaughtered. I mean, like, what are we going to do? Now, I mean, we've seen 65 press, killed. We've had an American citizen over there doing press slaughtered. No word from the United States government on that. I mean, we've seen, I mean, this is why this Motaz, I mean, to great risk to his life, that is he running this Instagram account with the sole purpose. And again, like, so when everybody says this is, most ridiculous, like the Marco Rubios and the Josh Hawleys and the Senator Tom Cottons of the world that are going to blame every single problem on China, forget TikTok, look at Instagram. And look at this guy that has gained 15 million followers in the span of 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it is.
He just clicked the 16 million.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, 2 months. He's basically been there for 2 months, and it's ridiculous. And so that's the difference, Alex. And that is why I think, it's important. That's why we have these YouTube channels, and that's why we're on social media, that we can provide nuance, that we can provide a different perspective. And I'm always, as you know, I'm a very positive person. So I do want to share a video that I watched earlier this week that was really positive. And I actually shared this on LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn, I've had a lot of like business professionals talk about, oh, this and that. And what's interesting is I shared this directly on LinkedIn, and, really was wanting to share this with some of these business professionals that don't understand the power of social media, that don't understand, international geopolitics as well as they should. And anyways, YouTube channel, it's called the Yes Theory, very big channel, about 8 million subscribers, probably heard of them. They went to an abandoned ghost town in China that was modeled after Paris. So it's an amazing video, because they start off and it's like, there's all these ghost cities in China, and we went to one that was built after Paris. It has the French streets, it has the French bakeries, it even has a Eiffel Tower in the center of the village, right? So he comes to the conclusion. He said, they basically, at the end of the video, to save time here, he goes, we went there and we experienced something that we never thought we would. In reality, this is so amazing here. I want to move here. Like, I want to live here. This is so cool. And then he goes, I guess we saw a side that media didn't stick around long enough to see. Because in the beginning of the video, you go there at 10 a.m. and it's a ghost town for sure. But all of a sudden at 7 p.m., the streets are packed. People are out, lively markets. And he's like, look at these children running around the streets, completely safe. They don't even have their parents with them. Like, this is a society that, like, can't do that in America. like they just had this different perspective. And he's like, wow, I've really learned a lot about coming to China, kind of seeing it with my own eyes. Like, and that's powerful when you get a YouTube channel of 8 million subscribers, but also, they're not a Chinese channel, right? They're kind of traveling around the world, but they want to come to China and experience it. And they've come away with something very different than what's presented in Western media. That's why, Alex, I'm just so encouraged. I'm inspired, and I'm very motivated to keep doing the work that we're doing here on YouTube, because everybody deserves a voice. And again, and I'm not saying that if you want to understand geopolitics, listen to Alex and Cyrus. Listen to everything, question everything, and get out there and do research. And most importantly, just approach things with an open mind. But what's happening in social media now is we are seeing that social media channels are becoming much, much more powerful than traditional mainstream media. And that has been because it's on the ground, it's live, and it's the real deal.
And there's been quite a big shift. We've even seen it here in Chongqing, where a person came up to me a couple of months ago and they said, you've been in media for a while. What do you think of new media? And I said, well, to be honest with you, there is a lot that we can learn from the old traditional media that used to be out there, forming relationships, building these contacts around the world. But what is missed in all of this is, as you said, this technology comes on very fast. How do you take this technology? How do you disseminate it when you are a channel that's on a very low budget? And how do you get those people to watch? I mean, it's very interesting. And something that I want to also bring up before we end this show today is you were out in Turkey. Can you talk about this adventure you were on?
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
Tell the audience. I'm gonna grab a battery charger for my computer. You
Sure.
tell the audience, or do you want me to stick around for it?
Oh no, well, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I mean, well,
Fire
I think
away.
I think we're almost wrapped up here. So let's wrap it up. But I do I have seen some people in the comments here, and I've many of you, if you're watching my channel, you notice about 2 weeks ago I launched a video where I flew to Istanbul and I had an interview with the managing director of Turkey's oldest newspaper. It was an amazing interview. It was very good. We could probably notice my appearance has changed since then. So I actually did, in fact, go to Turkey, and I did get a hair transplant. So I think many people have been asking about that in the comments. I know, Alex, for example, when I launched my video with Colonel Douglas McGregor yesterday, I had a lot of people commenting on my hair. And so, yeah, what you're seeing right now is you are seeing a complete hair transformation that I've gone through. It's going to be very interesting. We're only maybe 3 weeks back from my trip to Turkey. So it is still very much in the early stages. We're going to be I'm using a special shampoo every day. I'm taking care of, you can notice my headphones are kind of on the back of my head, not directly on top, but I'm very happy with the results here, on what we're doing, but it's not the end product, right? It needs some time to kind of nurture. But basically, Alex, in a few months, you're going to be able to see me. I'm going to hopefully have some flow like you, my friend. I'm going to have, some nice long hair and basically growing back. But I had an amazing opportunity. I want to give a huge thank you to Dr. Sinek, who is the company that basically the hair clinic. It is the #1 hair clinic in Turkey. We did a sponsorship. They wanted to bring me out, and they flew me out to Turkey. We did the hair transplant. They're going to become a major sponsor of this channel. We're going to do some future integrations. I'm going to be recording a video kind of documenting my hair growth journey. We're not going to release that till much, much later when we have the final product. But it is something that, for years I have been struggling with hair loss. It is for years my fans on the YouTube channel have been noticing, have been commenting, have been giving me advice, saying, Cyrus, can you do this? Can you do this? Take this supplement, try this thing. And this is really, Turkey leads the world in this type of technology. They're #1. It is a very amazing procedure, pretty much pain-free. It's quite amazing. I mean, I've came back directly from Turkey, feel normal, look normal. Just really happy about this. My wife's happy for me. I think for guys, Alex, I mean, I know you're not going to understand this, but once you start losing your hair, and especially when you're on YouTube every week, you want to look good. And I've had a lot of the loyal fans out there. They've been very fun. There's like, Cyrus, you're a good looking guy. Your hair's looking, you're losing your hair, man. You need to sort that out. So I just wanted to say, I wanted to kind of finally come out and tell everybody that yes, I have had a hair transplant. I am changing my hairstyle. Very excited about the results and going to continue documenting this journey. So look towards the future. I'm going to have a really good integration where we're going to really showcase exactly the process, what I went through, and then kind of show you this before and after. But again, we're going to, I'm actually going to, the hair you see here, you're going to have a little bit of loss on the little bit of shock loss, kind of months 1 and 2. So kind of months 3, 4, and 5, you'll have a lot of hair growth. So, it's a work in progress, as we say. But thanks for noticing, Alex, and thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I know how important it was to you because, I met you in Shanghai, and shortly after that, we talked about it. And of course, you're going to get some people saying, Turkey, do you want to get your hair done in Turkey? I mean, somebody just said Turkey's famous for veneers as well. The issue is that you felt very confident with this team. You went there, of course, saying to them, hey, I've had some other people that had this experience in North America or maybe other parts of the world. They were very concerned about this, and to see it. And I actually had some privy info before you guys did to see what this whole process was going along. I was quite excited for you to get it done. And, you went through with it. That's half the battle, we'll call it. And now, it seems to be going great for you. Now, is there, do you have to do a follow-up to this now? I know this, I'm interested in this, so that's why we're bringing it on the program. We have to, guys. I mean, we're going to be seeing Cyrus on this program for years here. Yeah, so we're going to be along this journey with you. But is there another process that this goes through? How does it kind of work?
Yeah, so the first really 2 weeks are very crucial. So you have to be very careful on how you wash your hair. You have to have a special solution. You have to avoid things like hot showers. You have to shower very gently. Certainly things like saunas or swimming in a pool, that's out. Interesting enough, the doctor said no physical exercise for 30 days. You really need to lay low. Wow. So I've been wanting to go to the gym every day, but I'm listening to doctor's orders. I'm just kind of relaxing a little bit. But no, I mean, really the first 30 days are kind of crucial, Alex. After that, like I said, you're going to have I'll have a little bit of hair loss. They call it shock loss, kind of months, but kind of months 1 and 2. Or kind of months 2 and 3, and then after that you'll start to see that grow. So it's kind of it's fun being a YouTuber because every week we're going to be new videos, and you're kind of going to be able to see this transformation. And yeah, I think there's some comments in here that are fun. Like someone said, Brian Burletic and Nathan Rich don't care, and I say, hey, those guys look good. Brian rocks the bald head very good, and I'll be honest, it's what I didn't really know about this. Okay, somebody also said in here, hair transplant. Wow, I didn't even, very interesting. Yeah. Didn't know that was possible.
I didn't actually think
I didn't know that was possible either. And that's why I had this hair clinic reach out to me, and they said, Cyrus, hey, you're a great YouTuber. We want to partner with you. We want to be a long-term partner. This is what we want to offer you, the chance to come to Turkey, the chance to come see it and experience this. And I did a ton of research because, I mean, it's a big deal. Flew halfway around the world. You're getting a procedure in your head, and so I was very, I did a lot of research on this, but I ultimately, my wife was very encouraging, saying, like, this is a great opportunity for you, and not only that, I know a lot of my fans have been, many guys struggle with hair loss. So if I can really be a success story and I can really help guys, and be an example of like, hey, this is what I looked like before. This is the procedure after. Take a look. It might be for you, and certainly, and certainly, this is going to be a great example. Couple things that I'm going to put in here. It's Dr. Cynic. People are asking where it is. So Dr. Cynic, you can just Google that, hair transplant. And the big thing about this, Alex, this is a different thing. So in the United States, you can get this surgery. Okay, I have a buddy of mine here in Las Vegas. He did the surgery. It was about $25,000 for the surgery.
Wow.
Okay.
Life-changing.
Life-changing one. Now, here's the problem, though. The United States isn't the best. They don't have the best procedures. So after the surgery, okay, his head had swollen up. He had a very big head. He had black eyes because of the trauma to the head, and he had migraine headaches for weeks after. When I asked Dr. Cynic, I said, the only person I know is my buddy here in Las Vegas, and he had it, but this is his side effects. And Dr. Cynic said, I don't understand the question. Like, what do you mean? Why would you have those? So, but long story short, because Turkey's system is much more advanced, I had none of that. I had no swelling in my head. I had no black eyes. I had no migraine headaches. People asking how many painkillers. I took no painkillers at all. The first, the basically the only thing that's painful is, you have to do some local anesthesia. So, you are getting some needles here to, basically numb the head for the procedure, maybe about 10, 15 minutes, a little bit of pain. After that, you don't feel anything. After that, it's pretty good. So, Dr. Sinek is the clinic that I went to. Comparison on the price, $5,000 is what this would cost. So you're saving a tremendous amount of money, but the main thing is you're also going to the number one place in the world that does this. Over 200,000 people travel to Istanbul, Turkey every year, majority of them being Europeans. Obviously very easy for, if you're flying from Germany, you're flying from the UK. I met a lot of Germans, a lot of guys from the UK whilst I was on my trip, and it's amazing. So I'm really happy to announce the sponsorship. Alex, thanks for taking notice, buddy. I know we've been chatting for it. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah. I know kind of a fun way to kind of end this, but sure. if you're interested, send me a message. I mean, happy, but this is going to be a long-term partner. And it's, it is really, really exciting for this. So thank you for noticing. And, it's going to be pretty even better.
We're gonna monitor this hair growth. Another thing that I'd want to bring to the attention of everybody here, I'm currently in negotiations to expand this show. Once we get confirmation on that, we have some pretty big meetings coming up here in the next couple of weeks. If that comes through, the show is going to be a lot bigger, and I look forward to announcing that. Cross your fingers that these meetings go well. But, one of the main negotiations in all of this is we don't want this show in any way influenced outside of the two characters that make this show great each week. That's Cyrus and I. And what we would like to do, though, is we'd like to expand the viewer base of this show. And that's always been a goal of mine here, especially with the Let's Talk China, and to try to also get guests on this show. Got to remember, Cyrus and I are two busy guys, and we try our best to make this show as consistent as possible. But duty calls where sometimes you have to aggressively go after guests. It could take 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get a guest on that show. Sometimes I'm available, sometimes he's not. So we hope that this will, bring us both into line here. If we get some good news here in a week or two, I would say we'll come back on here in a couple of weeks. It's got to be after the 22nd, to be honest with you. And once we come around there, I'll be able to give a proper update.
That sounds good, Alex. Yeah, I want to thank you for everybody. Thank you. We've had a nice, consistent number of people here in the stream. A lot of long-term supporters here. So, guys, the channels wouldn't be anything without our fans and our supporters. So we really appreciate you being here. And thank you all for your continued support. And I think in 2024, we're going to look to be a little bit more consistent in trying to get a regularly timed schedule here and just get out on the YouTube. It's always fun to do the live streams. I enjoy them. Gives me a chance to kind of decompress. All of those things I shared today in today's live stream are just articles that I've been reading, news clips that I'm going to be using in future videos. We're always, you might not see us in a live stream for a few weeks, but I guarantee you, Alex and I are working every day, really, really hard.
And so, I'll make you a bet there, Shenzhou. We will get Guelo 60 probably in person, sitting in this chair beside me on this show here in the next few months. I've been in contacts with Guelo quite a bit. And Daniel Dumbro, when he's not cruising around on his cool brand new motorcycle, we can get him into the studio as well to sit down with me. But anyway, guys, thanks again for supporting this live stream. Don't forget to see the new videos that Cyrus has put on his channel. You can find him at Cyrus Jansen on YouTube there. I'll put that plug up there one more time. Subscribe to Cyrus Jansen. There it is there for everyone to see. And as well, there's other channels out there like the New Atlas by Brian Berletic. Of course, Daniel Dumbro, the Duran as well, if you want to see that. And if you want to enjoy some cool content coming out of China, Reportify Media is also a good place to visit. That's my channel. Anyway, Cyrus, fantastic. I appreciate you getting up at this hour in the morning. We're going to say goodbye to everybody. You guys, thanks for watching. Take care.
Thank you.